I love so many things about your playing, but I really want to talk to you. I have an urge to talk to you about time and your vision of time. It's incredible. I mean, how when the one day where we played together, that was a special feeling when you write the symbol like that. You know, that's or do anything like it's really a special feel. And it comes across whenever I hear you. It's so strong and so effortless at the same time. It goes together with other topics that I would love to talk to you about. But I really, just want to let you loose and talk about time, your vision of time, how you worked on it, how you think about it, influences, whatever you want to talk about.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, particularly. There's some things I wanted to change about. I feel like I have a lot of relationships, really close relationships with great bass players in my life, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm learning so much from them all the time about really this specifically. My goal is in any situation to make the time feel really intimate, as though we are hugging or slow dancing. I have a really deep love for quarter notes. I think we often spend a lot of time in drum world thinking about dexterity, speed, and independence. Those things are critical to develop. You can't get anywhere without them, but you also really can't get anywhere with them and without a undying love affair with quarter notes. I don't know. There's so many different ways to play them. It's crazy. It's like the simplest, breakdown of rhythm, and yet there are infinite ways to play a quarter note, and there are infinite ways to play a quarter note with another person. Mm-hmm. I always in my mind am visualizing two hands. Like if this is the metronome, I'm always visualizing where someone is naturally in alignment with that. Then I'm taking that and figuring out where I can be so that we're moving. There's a feeling of togetherness in how we're moving, and yet we're still in adherence to where the time has been set. That's my goal. I am not always reaching this goal, but that is my goal. I've noticed that a lot of the bass players that I play with most frequently play just a little bit ahead, which is very in alignment with the tradition. With many traditions of bass playing, not all, but many, especially coming from a more straight ahead context, for sure. So I think what I used to do is I used to also really play on top, and then it would just be out the door. The tempo would be out the door, and we'd just be running. More recently, I've been really focused on the visual that I had in my mind. I was like, oh no, that's not going to come out. If I say it that way, it's not going to come out the way that I want. It's not going to come out right. But I am actually thinking about it in the sense of walking the dog like a leash. Mm-hmm. And not a leash like I want to be in control of you, or I want to. I'm not trying to subject my friends and colleagues to any kind of control dynamic.
Yep.
But there is something about like, okay, if this is a metronome and I know they're going to be on this side of it, which for you might look like the back side of it, sorry, but I know if they're going to be just ahead of the metronome, I want to be really cozily just behind the metronome so that there's just a little bit of that tension in the quarter note to keep us in alignment, but in a way that feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
So like a feather boa leash instead of like a chain leash or something, like something that's actually very warm and solid feeling of the quarter notes and of us together. And that doesn't have to compromise either of our own kind of intrinsic visions of how we like to play time.
And also your movement, right? Because you know, it's not a leash where you're bound to a pole or something,
right?
Because you're both walking. We're
both walking,
both in movement.
Yeah. So that's how I've been trying to combat my own tendency, which is to rush, for sure. I know this. And I know other people know this. But I think for me, especially in the last couple of months, I've been very focused on this. And it's funny, I have also been playing with Christian McBride a lot lately. And I actually saw him the other night. We had a conversation about this. And he was like, in a very sweet and gentle way, basically telling me, girl, you used to be rushing out that door. Like, you used to be rushing out that door. And now I feel like we're driving a car. And it's just calm and it feels good and it feels relaxed. And I just thought that was for me, that was a super high compliment.
That's nice.
Because Christian is obviously coming from a Ray Brown tradition. And not an only Ray Brown tradition, but heavily influenced by Ray Brown. And that is a tradition of playing on top of the beat and pushing the music in that kind of way, which is super beautiful. So it's been good for me to try and learn how to uplift that by laying back a little bit and letting that sit somewhere nice. I'm trying to give that kind of support.
Yeah, because leaning too much behind, back can lead to the whole thing dragging at some
there's
point.
Nothing worse.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse. It is in the conversation of is it better to rush or drag, I feel like absolutely 100% better to rush. That dragging shit, ass gotta go. Like it never feels good. And then particularly in more pocket type circumstances, that's something that I hear a lot when you go to sessions is like, I think a lot of times the drummer feels like in order to get that sound, that laid back, almost disjointed sound, that they have to drag. And it's actually really not that. It's that you have to have such a level of control over your limbs that you can place the hi-hat a little bit back, place your snare a little bit forward, and then have your bass drum be tapped in with a bass player who's leaning back a little bit and keep it moving. Like you have to be able to do all that and keep it moving forward.
Yeah. What are you practicing to be more, to get better at that?
For me, I've been practicing with a metronome, just moving the time in either direction. Ride cymbal, just playing chord notes, all four limbs.
Yeah.
At different dynamic levels with a metronome, and just experimenting with leaning a little bit forward or leaning a little bit back and still not losing that. I think is it's probably the easiest and most effective way just to recalibrate your own time system, I think.
Isn't that something that Max Roach used to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oldie but goodie. I think it's really a brilliant strategy for dynamic control and time control. And as far as ride cymbal stuff, there's 300,000 ways to play a cymbal beat. Every single great drummer in the world has a completely different cymbal beat than the person next to them. And it's fun to, I think, definitely important to experiment with all that. But at the end of the day, the thing that it must have, it seems, is there must be a very clear sense of where that quarter note is.
Yeah.
Wherever you place a skip, fine. That has to be so clear, and it has to live in your EQ on drums. It has to live at the top of the mix so that everyone, no matter what you're doing around the kit, this is at the top and this is signaling to everybody, here's where we are, and shape all of what you're playing around that, I think is the key, at least for me. Yeah.
Thank you for checking out this episode. If you enjoy these conversations, please consider joining me on patreon.com/PabloHeld. My Patreon community helps me to pay for the running costs of this podcast and to develop it further into the future. There's 2 ways to join me there. The interview tier will give you access to lots of behind-the-scenes content. And also you get every episode before everybody else gets, so that's early access to episodes. The other option is the music lessons tier, which will give you everything from the interviews tier, plus 2 video lessons on different topics each month. Lead sheets, so whenever I transcribe a new song, you'll get it first. You'll be invited to listening sessions and much more. So these are 2 options for you to join me there. By doing that, you will be helping me to continue this podcast. So thank you, and let's get back to the episode. Just going back to that exercise you were talking about, on what do you put the metronome when you do it?
Well, you can get tricky with it and set it up however you want. I mean, you could have it coming in every 2 bars on the 2. You could have it coming in on an upbeat, on the and 1, or something like that. I mean, you could really set it up however you'd like. But like if it's something that I think for, cats who are living in a certain area of experience, this is just like a quick recalibration tool for them. Yeah. I think if you're somebody who's coming into it or wanting to strengthen that in your own playing, and it might be the first kind of time that you're really giving this a lot of thought, start with the quarter notes and then start taking them out, maybe set it up so it's just on 4, or start displacing. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like I always tell my students that setting up all your fills to be on the 1 or the and a 4 is not enough at all. Like you need to figure out how you're going to be aiming for different parts of the bar always.
Yeah.
Setting things up for the and a 2, whatever it is, so that you're free to move ultimately, which is really all it's about, is like just trying to maintain your inner compass so that you're free to move,
There was this one moment in the auditions where we played together.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the day where I wasn't playing, but I was listening to you play with my friend Sebastian. And there was a bassist coming in. And all of a sudden, we had been through a couple of candidates where it was a bit rough maybe, or, it wasn't happening so much. Or it was a long day already. And then this bassist came in and just wanted to play a standard with you guys. I don't know if you remember this moment, but you were just playing quarter notes and you were like experiencing that moment, and it really locked in with the bassist. And you guys locked in with each other. And then you were like smiling into the whole room, and I could feel that smile coming from your face, but also from that quarter note,
Yeah.
That was a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's how good it can feel. And that's why I feel like, particularly if you're young and getting deep into this music and shedding and playing and like getting obsessed with it and starting to fall in love with it and all of that, it's like, this is another really great thing to fall in love with. Because what you don't know that you start to learn is that the people who are listening to you, particularly if they are in the scene already, if they're older and more established, they're hearing so much stuff that you're not even thinking about yet, that you're not even aware of yet. And you want to start to be able to hear the way they hear.
Yeah.
And I think that focusing too much on licks and language or things that you think that you can play that will signal to those people that you're serious and you know what you're doing. The thing that will signal that more than anything else is being able to play time.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
thank you for saying that.
Being able to play the hell out of some time and just so much so that you can reintegrate all the language and all the stuff, and the way that it's shaped is through this experience of the time. Everything has a place to land. Everything has a place to sit. Everything has a context, and now you sound really good.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like if there's a formula, that's a formula.
Mm-hmm.
At least from my understanding at this point in my life, which is like on the front end of all this, 30, and like still very much trying to hear what they're hearing and trying to like break through my own limitations so that I can keep leveling up, because the better you get, the better you need to get. There's no sense of like, okay, I got to this level and now it's cool. It's like as soon as you get to another level, you're like, oh shit, there's like 10 more things to be listening for and thinking about that I didn't even consider before because I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. There's this image of climbing a huge mountain. Yeah. And you see the clouds coming, you know, yeah. And then you see, oh, I think I made it. And then you realize, oh, there's a new plateau. I'm, you know, and then there are people like climbing next to you, but a couple of miles away, but you can see them. And there are people on top of you, but they're still all climbing on the same mountain.
Yes. Yes. And that's a really great analogy, because you notice as you grow, you notice acquaintances, friends, whomever, enemies, whatever. Like you just notice people hanging out a little too long on the next, you know, ledge. And for a myriad of reasons, I mean, there's I think the hardest part about music is it's so consuming, right? But while it's happening and while your process in it is happening, life is also happening. Mm-hmm. And there are so many things in your life that can pull you in so many directions and make you feel like you're losing touch with your trajectory in music or your relationship with music. And it's really hard. And so it's hard from many different positions. It's hard to see people surpassing you. It's hard to feel like you might be surpassing someone you're super close with, and you're like, wait, like there's all kinds of challenges in this long process, this very long arc process of becoming a musician and becoming a professional musician and going into that. But I always like to remember that if we're lucky enough to live that long, we're all going to be looking at each other at 80 years old, as we're seeing the older generations do. And I think most of us have much healthier lifestyles than they did at our ages as well. So it's pretty likely that we'll all still be in this, you know, decades from now. And I think that that's also a really nice thing to keep in mind, is like, this is a marathon, you know, it's not a sprint. There's nothing short-term about it.
Also, no shortcuts, really.
And there's no shortcuts. And it's a good thing that it's such a long arc.
Yeah.
You know, because there are no shortcuts. So you do have to go all the way through it. But that can be exciting, you know, it doesn't have to be too arduous or too, you know, discouraging. I think it actually can be really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Listening to that bootleg that you sent me, where I feel like it was either you placed the iPhone on the bass drum or right next to the bass drum, was so cool to hear. You know, I want to have this from all my favorite recordings now.
I wonder which one that was.
That was the Kenny Barron in Umbria that you sent me.
Oh, you know what it was? We were playing in a theater that is so gorgeous. If you've been to that festival, for listeners and stuff, there's a theater where they do a lot of performances, and it's just the most magnificent and beautiful theater. And you can hear anything that happens in that room, you can hear it. Anything. It could be someone way in the back, like, whoa, you can hear it from the stage, and everyone else can hear it. Like, and I was paranoid that my phone was going to go off.
Oh,
I was so scared.
Yeah.
But I was like, I have to record this performance. Like, it's critical that I record this. It's summer. It's Kenny Barron. It's Umbria. It's a beautiful theater. Like, I just need to have it for my own archives. I have to do it. And so I was like, just like put it on the floor. Because I was like, oh, if it goes off, I just want to be able to like crush the phone with my foot or something quickly. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why it was down there.
Do you record a lot of shows?
I go through periods where recording freaks me out, and the whole time I'm playing, I'm thinking about the damn phone. Mm-hmm. So I don't do it. In those moments, I'm like, if it's going to interfere with me being present, I'm leaving it backstage. Yeah. There are other moments where I'm like, I trust myself to not be thinking about it, and I'll record. And then there are moments where I'm like, this person is an elder. This person is someone I admire so much that if for any reason whatsoever I do not get the opportunity to play with them again, I must have this recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for my own self. Mm-hmm. Or just to show my kids, like, this is what they were sounding like. And it was tight. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. So it's just depends. And I don't listen to them the next day. Mm-hmm. Actually, I could be more diligent about the listening and parsing apart my own playing thing. But I still record it just so I can have it, because you don't want to deal with too many illusions or how you would like to be sounding versus how you're actually sounding. But then also sometimes you're not in the right frame of mind to be able to be remotely objective about what you're hearing. So sometimes it's not useful to listen back to it the next day if you already felt so bad about it that you can't really hear it for what it is, you know?
Yeah. You usually need to distance yourself. Although I feel like when it's already a day past, you're already not the same person anymore. And
right.
You're able to at least have some kind of distance to it. I also go through phases where I record like all the shows and listen to most of them. And now I feel like I can't really take it in. So I need to get some distance, because I was also listening to so many takes for recordings and stuff. I don't need another bootleg of myself to listen to right now. But there were certain times where I was like, I was struggling with leaving pauses for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there's still a topic. I play too much. It's just and
we probably
recording.
All play too much,
I guess. Yeah.
You know, a little bit. Probably. I'm sure we all have this conundrum to face,
various degrees. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always felt like when I then forced myself to make a pause and take away my hand, sometimes even really physical, like, okay, it's enough, and then play again. When I listened in the moment, it felt like the most brave thing to do, and this giant accomplishment and achievement on my part. Yeah, what a great pause, whatever. And when I listen to it, it's like, oh, you just took a little breath.
Yeah, it's like
went
1
right
second
back to
goes
playing.
by.
Yeah, and listening to it to like almost all of the shows that I recorded during that time really helped me. And right away, listening to them really helped me to get more a sense of time. How big or small a moment like this actually is in that moment.
Me and my friend have we love this show Avatar, not the movie, but the show.
Yeah.
About the airbenders and the waterbenders and everything. So we're always talking about, in the realm of music, this crazy thing about time that we experience in music. I would love to talk to dancers about this, because I feel like dancers have a very specific understanding of time. It's different than ours, but they might be the only other discipline that can physically feel what I'm about to say, which is that we are so focused in music on the millisecond. These like extremely small, maybe surgeons also have this, because it's such small movements and shifts in such tiny moments. And so much so much information is happening at such a crazy speed that if you check out for a second, you've missed all the information for the next whatever that sets up the next 4-8 bars of what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's like this crazy feeling of suspending the sense of time that other people are feeling. Because of course in the audience, you're like, damn, this show been going on a while. It's starting to feel long. But for us, we're like everything is so small and and we're so focused on these small particles of time that something like this, like a pause, has real weight and gravity for us in the moment. And then you listen back to it and you're like,
yeah. But the thing is,
it's nothing.
The thing is, infinity, the moment, which is infinite in a way,
Right.
the being in the moment. Then you talk about the infinite or the absence of time is just right around the corner always. But the ego is the thing that either looks ahead or backwards, in terms of let me play the next cool thing, right? I'm about to play the next cool thing. What am I supposed to play next? Or the other thing is, oh shit, what did I just play? Why did I play the? So it's either the future or the past. But the infinity is
right now,
in the moment,
right?
And then time is like, you can't even talk about it. But that's what Sonny Rollins says, like, you don't think while you're playing. The music is too fast for that.
100%. I had a conversation with Jack DeJohnette, and we didn't talk about drums at all. We just talked about time as his conception of it, which was vast. And he was talking about time bleed-throughs in time, which that's what he refers to, like deja vu. That's how he refers to it, as bleed-throughs in time. It's this, for him, I guess, I hope I'm representing this correctly, this idea that time is so cyclical, just time, time with a big T, is so cyclical that it's quite possible to be cycling through moments that have already happened, are going to happen in the future. There's something that feels familiar about it. You can't quite place it, And when I think about that in the context of music, even I was telling a friend, she's asking about playing in New York. And I was like, man, there's sometimes where you just look up and realize, like, I'm sitting in the exact same spot of the exact same stage that Max Roach sat.
Yeah.
Like, same spot. Like, you know, if he spiritually wanted to just do a little quick review of where he'd been in life and just happened to pass through that day, I would be sitting there, you know, or someone else would be sitting there. And it's this kind of feeling of always having legacy,
nearby,
this great expanse of time accessible to you in the moment that you're playing. I don't know. Maybe that sounds really out, but I think it's exciting to think about.
Absolutely.
You know?
How did that conversation with Jack DeJohnette come about?
I was a journalism major in college, and I was working with, I was interning with a production group called Capital Bot. They were producing concerts as well as a music publication, writing profiles on artists in the scene. And I got to interview Jack DeJohnette for them. And I did other pieces as well, like wrote profiles on cats that were coming through DC, which is where I was living at that time. I was living in Washington, DC for college. So it was fun. Like I was, you know, writing profiles on Jason Moran and getting to interact with musicians that I really loved and admired from two different angles. As a player, but also as somebody who was just interested in learning more about them and writing about them, which is fun. And I feel like for those of us who have those kinds of inclinations, like obviously I'm sitting on a podcast here with you, and so I know that you have this mind. It's like there's something I think that's really fun and fulfilling about just getting to like listen to people's how they're thinking about their process, you know, and getting into that. It's deeply fascinating and really fun. It saddens me that there's like a lot of music publications in the U.S. that have shut down in the last 5 years. I loved that moment in culture, at least when I was growing up in high school and stuff, where there was such a focus on talking to musicians and artists about what they were making and what they were doing. Like there was like the Fader and Wired and Pitchfork, and like there were all these places that you could just go to kind of get a sense for how people were making music on totally different scales. People in pop, people in avant-garde, whatever. It's super fascinating, and I loved that and still love that. So,
what else did you ask Jack DeJohnette?
I don't know. What did we oh my God. It was a while ago. It was a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago. And I have a recording. I really should go back and listen to it. I do believe that I asked him about this band he had called Compost.
Yeah, it's a funky band. Yeah. And he even sang sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He sang. I mean, it's like my favorite. It's now become like a catchphrase in my family, but there's a song called Boita. And it's like, Boita is a magic land where peace and love go hand in hand. And it's like vibes and like percussion and like it's like all this like freaky, like super spacey stuff. And I love that like him and Tony and like all these other musicians from that time were making, Roy Haynes, like Lenny White, they were all making super out spacey like soul funk records in the 70s and providing the next generation of like hip hop producers with excellent samples to build that music on, which is pretty incredible. Speaking about time cycles, it's just all of this stuff is accessible to us, and once you're tapped into it, like you could just keep using this material and all these new ways. It's super tight.
Mm-hmm. Getting back to that Kenny Barron bootleg that you sent me with the interesting iPhone placement. So I want to hear your thoughts on feathering.
Can you hear me feathering with the bass drum?
Yeah.
With the...
That's a lot of what I'm hearing. And I can hear all sorts of approaches to that, and a lot of drummers don't even do it or don't even study that tradition, or they do it but they overpower, or they do it, they study, they think they study it but without paying attention to dynamics and to sound. But it was so cool to hear this perspective.
I'm remembering the first time someone explained feathering to me. Mm-hmm. It was not something you could not get out of the Bay Area as a drummer without learning this. It was very, very important. There was a lot of emphasis put on that, I remember. For me, feathering is little kisses. It's like little tiny kisses. You don't want to scare somebody. You don't want to do too much. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You don't want to do too much. It's just, it's a really gentle and soft way to support and lift what's going on, I feel. And it's not that important that it's audible. It's just more important that it's felt.
Yeah.
That it's something that you sense is there more than hear is there. The upside for drummers in leaning into feathering is that it keeps that foot active so that when you want to accent something, you're not overpowering the force that's needed to accent that in a nice way. Because your foot is already in motion.
You're already there, yeah.
You're already there. Mm-hmm. So if you have to punch from, if this arm is not up and you got to throw a punch, you have to now bring this arm up, bring it back, whatever, if it's already up, then you can, you know what I mean? Put your weight into it and then that's it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like, it's a nice way to keep your right foot engaged. We don't want sloppy feet. Oh, we do not want sloppy feet. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a thing. I don't know if this is some old school vibe or what, but sloppy feet is a disease amongst us young drummers. Okay. The young generations of drummers, we are suffering heavily from sloppy feet. I feel that we need to get it together. That left foot got to put in some work on that hi-hat, and that right foot has to put in some work on that bass drum. Why not? Like, it's there. Use it, you know?
Where do you think it comes from? Too much emphasis on what the cymbal is doing? Or we know that that's important, but still, where does it come from?
Okay, like draft theory is that I think when we start learning how to displace time as drummers, a lot of times we're focusing on how to do that with our hands. Mm-hmm. But that's a full body exercise and experience, in part because as you're displacing, you have to always have a sense of what you're displacing around, getting back to the quarter notes. So if the time is here and you're moving it around and you're shifting things, upbeats and move it, like, cool. Your feet have to stay engaged with that process. If you're just doing it with your hands, when you re-enter the feeling of time, it's going to be sloppy and janky. And you're going to be rushing. So I feel like, just saying, I have done this I still do this. We all are victims of this disease. I'm just saying that I think the best way to really keep your entire body engaged with time is through grounding the time in your feet.
Yeah.
It's very important. And I was listening to some really beautiful young drummers very recently in a session context, and there was so many things that were really great about how they were playing, but one thing I kept hearing was like, where is that hi-hat? And I remember when we were doing the panel together, I yelled at somebody about that hi-hat. I can't remember who it was, but there is something that's missing, especially pretty much in any context, but especially in if you swing in. We need that hi-hat, babe. We need it. We need it doing something. It needs to be doing something. You don't want to put it on the 2 and 4, you want to switch it up, whatever, but we need to hear it. We need it.
Yeah.
You know? Sorry. Thank you for listening to my rant.
Please, that's what this podcast is about. Just please go on ranting. I feel like I want to hear more sound also from the hi-hat. I'm hearing a lot of closed hi-hats, but the actual instrument that can resonate also, oftentimes.
And for the amount of, energy that I feel like this is something that a lot of people are like, as people are really studying Marcus Gilmore, I'm like, are y'all missing the hi-hat work? Because the hi-hat work is central to his sound. And it's like, if you gonna bite our brother, throw that in there too. You know what I mean? Like, throw that in there too. We trying to hear that left foot, Obviously, big shout out to him for all the inspiration for everybody,
Yeah, what's your relationship to him and his playing?
Just that I'm a fan. And that, I have tons of respect for him. And there's so many situations that he plays in that he's just completely transformed with his approach. And just, he's like another cat that is just like, it's objective. It's like, I think everyone feels the same, which is that he's a freaking genius. And we have a lot of respect for him. And also, I think I am young, but have still lived long enough to see several iterations of like groundbreaking innovation in drums. So I would say Kendrick Scott, Justin Brown, Marcus Gilmore, Eric Harland, Chris Dave. Those are 5 that I'm thinking of that in my lifetime have completely, but I'm a 90s kid. So really it's Tane, Blade, Harlan, Chris Dave, Kendrick Scott, Justin Brown, Marcus Gilmore. So that's 7 cats that I can think of from the time I was born and aware of music as a young person, my parents involved in it. What they were playing for me, my dad was playing me triology to go to sleep as a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So like Blade was in my ears.
You know that sound, yeah.
Blade was in my ears as a toddler. And like all that whole time, I mean, those people who who are called to drums and then in their expression on the instrument change the game.
Yeah. It
is so exciting. And you can hear in everyone's playing at any generational point what, if it's a pie chart, you can hear like what percentage, what percentages of them are these people, and it's, I think it's beautiful to have that kind of shared history. And
I also love when influences pop out, when you hear influences.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. And especially if you hear it in a way it's like, okay, someone really took the time to digest this and integrate it into what they have to say. And now there's like a freshness to what they've taken and borrowed from this other person or entity. it's really, I mean, it's the most beautiful thing about our music, because we all do that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other side of that is I sometimes experience this with people who have big influence on the music world or the music that we listen to. Sometimes everybody is copying like just a tiny amount of that, and then you already know when it's coming. Like, okay, I think I'm gonna hear iterations of that for the next 10 years
Mm-hmm.
of people just taking that one aspect and doing their little spin on it. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And then you sometimes even lose the appreciation or the love
Mm-hmm.
for the original thing, and that's a tough
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's hard.
Whew. Yes, it is hard. Replication of, yeah, dissection, really. It's dissecting something brilliant, replicating certain aspects of it, and then enough production of that replica happens that you lose sight of the brilliance of the initial thing. And this is why I always feel like people should really go back and listen to like Dilla's catalog for real, or
Mm-hmm.
like go back and listen to like early Chris Dave with Mick Condition and with Michelle and DJ Ocello and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, or Chris Dave with Kenny Garrett, or
Oh
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
like going back, because those are people who were so innovative, are so innovative, that aspects of their production and playing, you know, other people have taken and done at varying levels. So it's important to go back and be like, okay, what was happening before that one second that people took? What was happening to really bring them to that place? And you go back and watch those. Man, I used to eat those videos for lunch and dinner. Those Chris Day bootleg videos. There's one where there's one specific one I'm thinking about. He only has a floor tom and like one cymbal, two cymbals maybe. And just watching that video over and over and over. And there's so much stuff, that's so much information in that one video that I'm actually not hearing really anywhere. It's really just like two things that people took. I'm like, there's so much more there. So yeah, I agree. It's hard. And it's like memification. And I think it's really hard for those cats to feel like they've been memified.
Yeah.
As opposed
sometimes
to like,
I wonder if they think like, oh, what did I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure they're like very sick of hearing aspects of themselves spit back at them, but without the context of who they are.
Yeah.
However, it's important to get excited by things and try them. Yeah. And so, like, you know, if you're somebody who is like really hung up on a certain aspect of someone's sound, it's like, it's good, but just remember to dig beyond that. You know, I think it's probably important to say.
Yeah, but the thing is, like that old saying of Clark Terry, where he says like, imitate, assimilate, and innovate. A lot of people stop at the first stage, you know, and they don't think about what am I actually doing there, because if you don't think about it, what am I attracted at here, you know? What is it that attracts me to this certain moment? If you don't think about it, that's one tool in your toolbox.
Yes.
And you might overuse it at times because you maybe don't have so many tools. And, you know, if you think about what it actually is and what it could mean in a different context, then the innovation starts, where you take something that comes from a place where you once found it, but you take it to another place, and then the innovation happens.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was just thinking, like, what is the foundational approach that leads you to these conclusions or these ways of moving through this? Because I feel like when you're playing with the desire to impress others singularly, so just the difference between I want to sound good and I want the band to sound good, the unit to sound good, that subtle shift is actually a huge shift in how you are approaching, what the music and how you sound, how you're playing. Mm-hmm. And that thing about like taking something that you're inspired by, assimilating it, and innovating, creating something new from that. It's similar. It's like, are you going to be extractive about it, or are you going to give something back to that swirl, that kind of collective loop of information? Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that, like, coming to the music at any level, at any stage, you always have to check in with yourself about, am I playing for me, or am I playing to contribute to something larger right now? I don't know. There's so many. I feel like as musicians, we're prone to neurosis a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's hard to like remember, particularly if you're not feeling great about yourself or whatever in that moment, it's hard to remember, like, I belong to a collective, and it's actually not as important how I myself sound right now. Mm-hmm.
Savannah, yesterday I played a gig, and we played 3 gigs in a row.
Yeah.
One was fine, I guess. The next one was special, I thought. And the third one was like, what's
what
with
happened?
Today? What's happening? And of course, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still processing it, and it feels so good to talk to you about all these things, because a lot of things that you say, I'm like, let me try again. Let's get back in there. Let me try again. Because a lot of the things that we talk about with other people, and these are things that we collectively need to hear again and again, and need to say again and again in different words
for ourselves and for each other. Totally.
So
I had a really similar experience. I had 3 gigs back to back. One was cool, one was rough, one was way better, and in every moment it was like, it's a new day. We're all coming to this with different experiences throughout the day. But what musically is determining how this is going on any given night, and like really being reflective about that. And I think it always just comes down to the stuff that we're talking about now, which is just like, the more we get out of our head and into the present with each other and depend on each other to do that, the better I think the music will sound.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but like, we gotta try. We gotta try.
Yeah, exactly. You were about to tell me how feathering was first described to you.
I did not understand it at first. So I wanted to be a punk and hardcore drummer. I'm not even gonna lie. Mm-hmm. My parents are jazz musicians, but I was like, I want to be in Bad Brains. I want to be playing with Lenny Kravitz, like Cindy Blackman. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to be heavy foot, 4-on-4. Let's go.
Yeah.
I still have that in my spirit, but I've learned to direct it in the appropriate ways. So it was hard for me to understand the difference between, I think it was hard for me physically to understand this feeling of the attack, the contact with the head, and then the bounce off.
Yeah.
And what that feels like in your foot, in the muscles in your foot, is it's a thing. It's a thing to consider, I'm sure, like with all other instruments, particularly piano is the only one that I'm thinking about where you have this combination of touch in your fingers and touch in your feet and how and the interplay between those two things. So I think that was challenging for me at first until I started understanding what the sonic difference is based on what your foot is doing. The when you're working out, they talk about that like mind muscle connection, but in our world, it's that connection between, you know, your ears and your body, like what the difference of sound quality is with these tiny little shifts in your hands and feet, in your wrists, in your forearms, in your shoulder, your posture. It's audible. And so kind of, I think feathering for me is probably the first instance of me starting to pay attention to those nuances and try and understand how to like master my body so that I can get that achieved sound. And then with feathering, there's the other layer of, it's not the sound you're going after, it's the feeling you're going after that you're producing from this really subtle shift in bouncing off this thing. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Actually, I started with drums first and then moved to piano when I was 10. Yeah. But the thing is, I didn't come close to any topic like feathering when I was playing the drums, you know. But what I'm a non-drummer by now, you know. Sometimes I sit at the drums and still enjoy it, but I have a affection for the drums and for drummers and for the perspective also. I like to listen through the perspective of a drummer. But I'm always wondering, and maybe this might be a very naive thought or something, that because you touched on it before, like I would get thinking about it now, I would get freaked out by the difference in dynamic of the feathering that's going on. And I'm wondering, like, what's happening when you're feathering, then you're playing something that's a little bit more aggressive, engaging, solistic. Do you miss the feathering while you're doing that? Because you want to have that feeling all the time, in a way, maybe?
I think the most beautiful thing about the bass drum is like it's completely its own instrument. So you're always... You could do a gig with just bass drum and it be weirdly quite effective. I feel, and I think if you're a person for whom, like in your conception of drums, if you're a person for whom the bass drum is really central to your voice, which for me it really is, the whole range of what's possible with the bass drum is thrilling to me. Like thrilling to me, actually. So I don't miss it if I'm not feathering in the moment or if I'm taking a different approach with the bass drum, because the whole range of what's possible, particularly with sound and placement, there's so many different sounds you can get out of the bass drum, but also where you place those sounds in the larger context, whether it's you're soloing, so it's the larger context of the sounds that comprise your kit, or if it's the larger context of the sounds within the ensemble, there's such an art to it, and it's like really exciting. I will say just really quickly, like the real reason that I love the bass drum is because of Greg Arico from Sly and the Family Stone. And when I was a kid, my family was very big on Sly and the Family Stone. So I was also always, you know, hearing them and always like, what are these funky ass grooves? And like, what is this crazy relationship that he's developed between the bass drum and the high and like what he's playing on the high? This was very thrilling to me. So I always have thought about it from that space. And then, of course, as soon as you start listening to old bebop recordings and you start hearing what Max Roach is doing with that bass drum, you're like, oh, okay, so this is a critical part of this instrument, and there is an art to this. There's a way to do it. Vernal Fournier is another person that I'm just thinking of in terms of like people who really get bass drum placement.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are many who are not jumping into my mind right now, but I'm sure are jumping into other people's minds as they listen to this, and it just shows like how critical that is, and how much fun you can have with that. I feel like it's pretty fun.
Yeah. How about tuning your drums? What do you think about it?
I'm in transition with tuning right now. I'm in tuning transition. I had a conversation with Joe Sanders a couple weeks ago. And I think one of the most beautiful things about my experience with Joe Sanders, but I think most people's experience with Joe Sanders, is that what he tells you is very important. Whatever it is, what he tells you is important. You need to think about it. You need to spend some time with that and think about that. And what he said to me was like, what is the sound that you want to get out of the drums? Obviously, your touch is your touch and we hear it. But what is the sound that you really want to hear come out of your instrument?
Yeah.
And my answer was pretty varied. I was like, it really depends on the situation, because sometimes I want to have like Dave Grohl, Nirvana sounding drums. Like sometimes I want this crazy bombastic sound. Other times I want this like super buttery, like touch sound, like, like purr, 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 purr. Like sometimes I want that. So, but I know what he's saying, and there's really something to that. And I've been thinking about it because my teacher was Kendrick Scott. Who on this earth is getting a more consistent drum sound than Kendrick Scott? He is a master at this. Like, I spent a day at his house just tuning snare drums. And he allowed, this is an incredible thing. If you know about his sound, you know that snare is so consistent. It is so crispy. It has a perfect crack, perfect crisp, perfect, like, it's excellence. And he detuned all his snares and said, go ahead, sis, get to work. Let's go. Let's. And I was like, oh my God, all these perfectly tuned snares. And he said, let's just take them down. And so we spent, the day doing that. And I've just been thinking, man, I need to call that brother again and go up there and do another day of tuning, because he has such a beautiful sound. And so I have been thinking a lot since this conversation a couple weeks ago about exactly what I want my drums to sound like. And each night that I'm playing, I'm experimenting and I'm tweaking things a little bit. I have a general sense. Each drum kit is really different. And on the road, no two kits are going to give you the same response. So typically I'm tuning in a range that I enjoy, but aiming for what's the sweet spot of this rack tom, because it's different than it was yesterday. There's different heads,
So you're not going for like, okay, I'm going to
pitches.
Always go for a G natural or something. Yeah.
But I have been considering starting to do that.
I asked pretty hard when I played with him, and because he took so much time to tune his drums, and also to set up the drums. And I was asking him, so like you have a very specific sound with the snare and the toms, and what do you think? And he said, I'm thinking about a chord, and it's F over A. I need F over A.
Ooh.
A in the bass, And I just today thinking about this, like when you play in a lot of flat keys, like a lot of jazz standards are like in B flat or in F or E flat. It's maybe some useful notes in there, Not that it has to be like that, but
I love that. I think that's super fire. And
yeah.
I'm glad you told me that, because I think that I'm not really interested in these kind of like formulas. But if there was one that was super customized, that would interest me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I found, and I think this is brilliant, like finding some kind of sound that's like, okay, this is great for most of the projects that I live in.
Yeah.
And this is something that's different from what other people are doing, and like a great sound for me. I think that is really what I need to find.
Yeah, and also
good
like
good tip.
Certain intervals resonate in a different way. So
Mm-hmm.
I think his F over A wasn't a F major in root position. It was, I think, the second inversion. So you get A in the bass, and then you have C, F, A. I think that's how I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So that you have a perfect fourth there, and you have a sixth there, and certain intervals that give you a lot of overtones. Maybe, I don't know. So
yeah. That's cool. That's exciting. I'm going to play around with that. I'm going to play around with that and see what I find, because this is a question that I am trying to answer right now. And also it's a question I'm trying to answer in a larger sense beyond tuning. Like, I think in this first chapter of me trying to develop my career, like I was really focused on being able to play in a lot of different situations and feel comfortable reading a lot of different types of stuff, and being really comfortable with math, really comfortable with moving in and out, like also comfortable with tipping. Like that's been the focus of like the last 10 years, I guess. Mm-hmm. In this next 10 years, there are other things I want to focus on. And the main thing is like, I really want to make some decisions. Like I want to be decisive about exactly what it is I'm trying to say, exactly what it is I want to present, exactly what it is that I like, what I want my print to be on this larger, I don't know, legacy of the instrument or legacy of the music.
So that means paying more attention to others in that regard, or paying more attention to yourself in that regard.
Yeah. And just, I'm a person who really does like everything. I mean, there's some stuff that I categorically do not like, but most things I'm kind of down for. Like, and I feel that that's cool. But in terms of what I want my contribution to be, I need to be a little bit more decisive about that. And that's really on my mind. I haven't made a decision yet, but I need to soon. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I've been grilling myself about lately, and like the work that I need to do is just kind of figure out like how to mesh what I love together in a way that's like, this is me. This is what I represent. This is how I want to communicate.
Mm-hmm. But just as an outsider or somebody, I have a sound of you in mind. When I think about you, I have a sound in my mind. I have a way of playing, a certain energy, and also I was super amazed of your gift for making a quick connection to somebody. I could feel it when we met, when we when we hung out. You have a gift for making a quick connection, and not just everything is fine, let's or small talk or whatever. You go you go in quickly and
somebody told me that the other day. They're like, girl, you always asking them questions, like you always asking me like, how's your wife? What's going on in your life? Like, how are the kids? What are they learning? Like, whatever, but I don't know. There's a lot of, thank you for that. I take it as a compliment. Thank you for that comment. I feel like there's, especially in jazz, there's a whole lot of this like, yeah, man, woo,
Mm-hmm.
like, woo, don't be saying shit. Ain't about nothing. Like
Yes.
it's not really. We're not. I mean, it's cool if that's something genuine that you're feeling, which is that, oh my god, like I enjoyed that. But I think it's nice to get specific too and tell the person what you like. Like I
Yes.
remember, there's two people that I love to hear on brushes. Kush Abade, I love to hear on brushes. I will cry listening to him on brushes. I don't know what it is. It's just the way he plays brushes is really special to me, and it hits me in the right place. Jerome Jennings,
Mm-hmm.
another cat. I love him. I love how he plays. I love hearing him play brushes, and I just have told them both recently, like, this part of you I just adore deeply. It brings me a great sense of joy. And I think it's nice to get out of that kind of general like zone. I think sometimes that strikes me as a bit anxious. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to make sure that we're cool and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like we're all on the same level and it's good. It's like, actually, we're not all on the same level. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are really good at shit that I can't do,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. And like, I think it's cool to really be like, yo, this thing that you do, I love. Like, I love it. Um, and you're kicking my ass, and I'm grateful for it. Like, I think it's cool to just say that.
Yeah, and also if we don't get specific, we'll be drowning in generalities and just
Forever.
forever. Yeah.
Saying nothing. Like,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And
So how did they react when you told them?
I hope it made them happy. I got the sense that it was something nice to hear, and I definitely believe in complimenting people. Cause yeah, we like, especially if you're on the same instrument or you're like maybe on different sides of a generation, but in a similar age range, there's like a lot of um I think a lot of the social interactions tend to revolve around like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how are you? What have you been up to? What have you been up to? Like, are we still on the same? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
really trying to figure out your rank. This is how I think about it. I'm like, I think people
Mm-hmm.
are always in these subtle ways trying to detect
Yeah.
rank movements.
So did a lot of people come to your show? Was it full? Was it a good sound? Yeah.
It was pretty full.
Yeah, exactly.
It was full. There were some heavies in the audience
Yeah, exactly.
scaring me to death.
Yeah.
Terrence Blanchard made some appearances. Sean Jones made some appearances. Taylor Ikesty made some appearances. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Hey
Yeah, but
guys.
that's also what people are trying to feel out, asking you questions like that. So
Asking you questions like that. It's like,
yeah.
do people come to the show? Like, what have you been up to lately? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the road. I see you're on tour. Like, who are you on tour with? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, cool. But like, we're all hustling. We are
Yeah.
all hustling. We are all hustling. And I think there's ways to connect with each other a little bit more authentically,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in getting more specific or saying like, instead of being like, oh, who are you on tour with? When you know who they on tour with, you
Yeah.
could just be like, I saw this clip.
Yeah.
I saw
Exactly.
this clip of y'all and it was dope and I loved it. Or
Yeah.
I saw this clip and I had a question.
Yeah, I didn't
Or I
understand the
saw
thing or
this.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't fuck with it. I saw this clip and I wasn't really vibing with it. So I have a question. Or
Mm-hmm.
just, I see that you're busy. How's your heart? How are you doing? Like, how's your fam? Like, I don't know. I just think there's ways to connect with each other that are actually the true meaning of community, like how to really connect
Mm-hmm.
and actually talk to each other a little bit more about that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my little note for
Yeah, that's
maybe a little
beautiful.
way we could be more.
But but when you do this, a lot of people have trouble even posing a question, because posing a question might imply that you don't know a certain thing. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of people don't pose a question because they want to belong to the group of people who know shit. You know?
I mean, there's so much stuff I don't know. Like, I'm embarrassed frequently. I'm frequently embarrassed by what I do not know, because there's so much stuff that, like, like, I am a person, you know, I will admit this. I'll sit here and admit this. Like, I am a person who spent more of my, like, young adult years, like, I did grow up playing music all the way through, but I spent more of my young adult years, like, listening to, like, Bjork and Soundgarden and, like, you know what I mean? Like, Jadakiss and, like rap from, like, I was listening to, like, a large variety of stuff, but I am not the person actually who, like, spent 2 years of my life deeply studying Jack DeJohnette, like 2 years of my life, like, deeply, like, I am not that person at this point in time. These are aspirations of mine to get to that level of knowing. So I'm frequently embarrassed by what I don't know, but at the same time, I feel like the beauty in that is, like, you don't have to say anything and you can just listen and learn. So that's cool. Like, there's always that option.
But also, I mean, there's lots of things that you have listened to that are part of you, you know, and just, you know, and those are the things that people who don't have that didn't listen to and could be embarrassed about themselves, you know.
Right.
And, you know,
so we all have it.
We all can't know everything and will never know everything. And it's, I think, becoming a little bit older, or at least I can say it for myself, I'm trying to accept more what my package is, you know, and not in terms of
100%.
okay, I'm closing the thing, that's me, you know, no development, because that's who I am, you know. I always want to keep evolving and learning new things. I want to maintain. I actually can't help getting my curiosity in check. It's always there. That's what propels me forward.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to just say and be accept where you're coming from, and that all of that is part of what you bring to the table, and all of that is part of your sound also.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And, you know, and I think also too, like, stemming from that, instead of being ashamed about what you don't know, like, there is, in the same time that it takes to be ashamed, you could also just be on Google, like, get into it, you know? So it's like always having to redirect your own feelings of self-doubt, your own feelings of self-consciousness towards like a healthier solution for you. And that's always available. And I think in music, we get caught up, I think, a lot in either downplaying our skills and strengths, or, you know, kind of beating up on ourselves about what we don't know, what we haven't been doing. And while I think a lot of that can be healthy in propelling you forward, it's only healthy if it's propelling you forward. Like, you still have to transcend those thoughts in order to get to what it is that you need. And if you can shorten that time, then even better. The
things that you're sharing on social media in terms of music, show a variety of things that you're interested in, and obviously also trying to learn about, you know. Of course, I can't send you a question for each song that you post or something, but there's some things where I think, like, I'm noticing you're on a streak of, checking out a certain area of music,
Yeah.
a certain language maybe, or a certain tradition. And then there's things where you share something maybe about, I guess, your past, or things that you're checking out at the moment. But there
Yeah.
always seems to be like a lot of new things coming in. I was wondering like where that inspiration for that comes from.
Yeah, I have always, it took me a while to identify as a musician, even though I've been playing drums since I was 2. Like, but I am like, always have identified as a fan, as like a listener, as just somebody who loves music and relies on it to carry me through life. Listening to music, hearing new things is top joy of my life. Like, that's really it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this never occurs, but if there were ever a time, as we do see sometimes with our elders, where they're not able to play, this would impact me deeply, but I would feel solace in the ability to hopefully still be able to hear and listen to music. It's really my joy. Like, I love driving in the car, because I'm from California. I love the car, but I love driving through New York in the middle of the night and listening to music. And I love the feeling of hearing something in your head, going to listen to that song, and just following that train. Yeah. Sometimes I love people sending me records I've never heard, or songs that they just think are interesting. I love that there's never a point at which you have ever even scratched the surface of a genre. So like last year, I spent 3 months with Gilberto Gil. 3 months with him and Caetano and the whole crew, Maria Bethania and Gal Costa. Like, I spent 3 months with their crew, and still have not scratched the surface of that era, of that particular scene. And that's true for any scene. You could do the same, obviously. I mean, you spend your life with jazz records. It's endless in a 20-year period of output. And you go look at the discographies of these cats, like Billy Hart. You go look at this man's discography, and every year it's like 1970, 5 records, 1971, 3 records, 1970. It's just endless, the output that they were able to create. So that's where it comes from for me. It's just pure excitement about hearing something new. And it's amazing to me that we only have 12 notes and everything in between them, because the amount of stuff that people have created is just... Yeah.
And if you spend time with people like that, they become like your folks, your friends. You hang out with them. They become you enter that scene a little bit if you really go deep.
Yes. Like, there's an Amazon show about Gilberto Gil's family and their preparations for this world tour that they went on last year, that I was devastated not to see. You saw this?
I saw this.
So it's like,
that was sweet.
Like, it's so sweet. And it was so fun for me, like in my house, cooking with the TV on, watching, this show about them basically doing the same thing and getting ready. I'm getting ready to go on tour. They're getting ready to go on tour. And like, it's just super sweet feeling. And I love that. And then it's also cool, the more music you check out, to see that there's certain rhythms that are the same rhythm, but they have completely different worlds built around them around the world. It's crazy to see the clave show up everywhere and get reinterpreted over the years. Like, for example, like in the last 2 years, the way that like African popular music, like South African popular music and West African popular music, stuff from like Lagos, stuff from South African stuff has just taken over the world at the same time that reggaeton and dembow have had a resurgence coming from like Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. So at the same time, at least for me, it's interesting to me to have these two styles of like diasporic popular music that rhythmically are so connected. There's so many things that are present in both. And to hear those both kind of take over like global popular music at the same time is like, cool. So there's something to that. People are drawn to this feeling and this kind of movement in their body, this sensation that these rhythms give them. That kind of stuff is like endlessly fascinating to me.
Do you play along to records a lot?
I feel like I have played along to records a lot over the course of my life. Lately, not so much. I feel like right now, in the last year, all the time that I have to shed is put towards maintenance, which is a drag, actually. It's kind of a drag because I feel better when I have more time to put towards exploration. When the maintenance is already there and I have more time to put towards exploration and furthering the skill set.
Yeah.
But lately it's been like, okay, I have 2 days off and I need to not lose my chops in the 2 days that I have off or the 3 days that I have off. And like, what do I need to do to keep this up?
What kind of maintenance do you do?
It's a lot of like warm up stuff, basically. It's like daily warm up stuff. So sometimes I'll cycle through like Wilcox and stuff slowly.
That's a shortcut, right? That's a shortcut. Doing things slow.
Doing things slow.
That's the shortcut. That's maybe the one shortcut that we have.
And it's like so counterintuitive. You would think like, but it really 20 minutes of that will save you before a gig, I feel. Especially if it's a day you're not feeling that great, or it's a day where you're like, these fingers in your left hand are stiff, you know, or this part of your left hand feels stiff, and you're like, yo, this is not good. Like, it's nice to start doing those inverted paradiddles and stuff like that really slowly and just like reopening up this whole feeling, you know, all the way through your forearms. I am not a good stretcher, but I'm trying to become a better stretcher because the stretching is key, and like keeping this, I tense up in my forearms a lot. I'm trying to keep that open.
Well, it doesn't look like that at all when I see you. Everything looks super
great
relaxed.
that it's doing its job. I'm fooling the people. No. I mean, thank you for that. I try to focus on that. For me, drums is not about, for me, everyone is different, but for me, drums is a still practice. It's just about this stuff. And then obviously the to your feet, the same thing, same kind of group of muscles, but
it's not, everything is not coming out of here. I see, maybe I'm projecting, but I see you using the weight of your arms also.
Yeah.
Or your shoulders, like using the positive aspect of body weight and natural weight of our limbs, which are incredibly heavy if we give in to them, you know?
Totally. And I think, I try to use that in combination with trying to keep my wrists loose and so that I could get more bang for the buck. You know, it's like I'm trying to get the most sound and agility out of the least amount of physical effort that I can put. You know who's great at that? Justin Tyson is really great at that.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Tyson's really great at that. Like he gets a lot of power and a lot of sound and speed out of what appears to be a very liquid, relaxed, like good posture and then just like relaxed arms, but he's like flying.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Brown's also really good at that. Like he's one of the first people that really I could really see, because I spent a lot of time like watching him, you know, either from the side or just from, you know, like standing in the balcony or above or whatever, and just kind of seeing like how he's a very physical player, but there's something about, I mean, his like muscles here are very, very like strong. And in this, there's something about how he, there's some combination of strength and looseness that is really allowing that power to come out for really long periods of time. Because if he's playing a set, it's like almost 2-hour set and he's shredding the whole time. So I'm always like, how the hell? And I've always been inspired by watching those guys play and trying to apply that to what I'm doing over here in my little piano trio vibes.
Mm-hmm.
different circumstances, but same skills, you know.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Cindy Blackman.
Let's talk about Cindy Blackman.
Yeah.
A queen, an icon.
Mm-hmm. Did you talk to her?
I don't know her personally.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know her. I want to know her personally.
Same here.
I'm just
Same
like,
here.
we're sending out the vibes. Cindy Blackman, please. I want to talk to you. I have so many questions, but I think one of the questions I really have is, I would love to ask her two things. I would love to ask her, what about Tony Williams she resonated with so much? Because, and I want to know if her answers are similar to mine or different from mine, but the way that she, talking about imitate, assimilate, and innovate, the way that she has brought that language into her body over the years, and it is just part of the stream of consciousness that flows out of her, and how beautiful and crispy it sounds, but also how it's like very much her. I'm curious about that, like what that initial thing was for her, like what it was that made sense to her. Because I know for me, one of the things about Tony that is like, is there's a lot of stuff that I feel like he made possible for us within the jazz space. It's like there's inclinations and there's things that you want to do with the drums that weren't really allowed, weren't really appropriate, weren't really, that he kind of just blew the door open for. And I wonder if it has something to do with that. The other question I want to ask her is, what is it like to just be an iconically beautiful, sexy, gorgeous, fucking rock star woman? Like she's been eating it up since I was a kid. Like when I was like 7, I went to Yoshi's in Oakland to see her play. Mind you, I had all the VHS tapes, all the Cindy Blackman drum tapes. I had them, was watching them.
Sure.
The fits, the outfits, the hair, the outfits, the vibe. I was like, oh, she is a dream. The body. Talk about the body. Like she just, oh my God, eating them up, eating the girls up. Whole time. And now, even still, like same thing, same consistent energy. And watching her with Lenny Kravitz when I was a kid was groundbreaking for me, like game changing. I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to be that girl.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But those are my thoughts on the icon, the legend.
Yeah. I think that thing that that you talked about in terms of Tony, I don't have an answer for that. We would really have to talk to her. But what I love is that I think she took a lot of deep aspects of his playing and was able to put them in so many different contexts and get a personal thing out of. I'm curious about her energy and like that rawness of energy that she seems to be able to just tap into, like that. You know, put it on.
Yeah,
you know? It's like
just flowing out of her arms.
Yeah,
love her.
Yeah. Love her. What's a couple of favorite records with her?
There was a record that she made. And I remember there was Someday My Prince Will Come was on it. And I wore that record out, and the album, the cover art is her just like gorgeous.
In red?
Freckles.
Does she have a red dress or something?
I don't remember. I'm just remembering the face, the hair, the freckles, the vibe, the lighting. Gorgeous. And I hope that's the right image. I have to I should be Googling as I'm answering this question, but I'm this is what's burned into my mind. That and this Zildjian ad that I had from her where she's in a black tank top, black pants, hair, arms out, holding the sticks. And I'm just like, oh, girl, yes. Yes. And that's what I got her to sign when I was a kid. And it's just great. Amazing, iconic, beautiful.
We need everybody needs role models like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was kind of my answer to that, because my dad was he had so many drum videos in the house.
He was a pianist though.
He's a pianist, but he also played drums, and he makes drums. Beautiful sounding drums. So he was drum nerd. I think more so even on the gear side of things, and really into that. So he used to be in the house watching Simon Phillips drum videos, watching Clayton Cameron drum videos, we would always watch that clip of Tony Royster Jr. when he's 12 at the Modern Drummer show. He's 12 with blue cans on, and he's and my dad always used to be he's 12. He's 12. I don't know what you're doing, but he's 12. And I'd be like, you're right. Beautiful. Love that. And so I kind of had my version of that with her and her orange, suit vibe. In my memory, I can't wait to look this up after this conversation so I could see if I'm if my memory of this is totally off the money, but she's in an orange leather, two-piece fit. So good. And honestly, we're not coming like that anymore. And we should be. I think we should be a little bit ashamed of ourselves, to be honest, aesthetically. I think musicians, we need to get it together. Because they were eating us up back then.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this in the Mixcloud thing. And here
I am sitting in a bandana and a hoodie and disgracing myself. However, I still think, there's something about that is just so cool. And I will say, the kids who are coming into the music now who are 22, they're on it.
They pay more attention on it. Yeah.
They're on it. They're one of my favorite parts of this weekend. If you're in my generation or above, when you think about Dizzy's, there's a certain kind of cultural code that you're thinking about, most likely. These kids were in Dizzy's in mesh tops, baggy jeans, Doc Martens, and killing. Playing bad language, like playing for real, sounding really good. And I just was thinking like, okay. And I know who to thank for this. Like, we can thank the homies for this. We could thank Joel. We could thank Emmanuel. We could thank those kind of people for this, because I feel like I remember when Joel was like, I'm gonna wear what I want to wear to the gig. And there was a lot of pushback from the older generations, because at the time he was like newly signed to Blue Note, and he was very much like, this is where it's going. And he was like, I'm pulling up with my locks and my hoodie and my beanie, and I'm cozy and I sound great. What's up? And, you know, or that's how I felt hearing him. I don't know if that's the spirit he was bringing to it, but for me, I felt very liberated by this, because I was like, you know, there's the Suits era of jazz, and there's been a couple eras of that. There was a resurgence of that in the 90s, but there's also what happens in between those eras, which is a lot of experimentation with style. You see, like, I'm sure do you follow Peter Erskine on Twitter?
I'm not on Twitter. I don't follow him there.
On Twitter, and maybe on other platforms, Peter Erskine is sharing photos that we have not seen, photos he took of these cats, right? And it's like tour pictures of Weather Report, you know, tour pictures of Wade Shorter, and these cats look so good. Joe Zawinul, they're just like dressed beautifully, funky style. I love it. I love to see it. It's super inspiring. And I'm just like, in my own head, yelling at myself to get it together, but also it's something I would love to see in the coming years. Like, I would love to see people like really step into exploring that side of performance as well. Because we're the only performers that don't take that don't take wardrobe into consideration. Anyone else on a stage has wardrobe.
It's true. Yeah.
You know?
I was always, or am always torn. Maybe also it has changed in the last years for me. Maybe also through COVID. I don't know. But also some thoughts in that area. But I was always torn between, okay, I also want to be taken seriously, you know? And I also want to, if I play in a club, I'm going to dress differently than in a philharmonic hall or, you know, on a festival. So all these gigs kind of, I think sometimes for me, call for different kind of approaches. But I'm always going to take it seriously. That's always a conscious thought.
Yeah.
I might not look like Björk when I'm on stage.
Right.
But I totally respect that and love that about her thing. You know, and also I think sometimes it has to fit the music or contrast the music. It always has some sort of function when you dress.
Yeah, but I think in the modern, more creative music side, like, I don't know if it's connected to how composition heavy that music is, or the music that we play is. But I'm always like, there are some cats who I'm always a little bit impressed with, and they're quiet about it. Like Toma Fujiwara, like on drums. I'm always like, I see you, bro. You're like, he's low about it. He's really low about it, but I'm like, I see you in the denims. Like, I see it. I see the vibe. I see the look. Like, I see it's fun. It's fun to see people's personalities come out through what they wear, if that's something that's important to them. But I think sometimes the stoicism that seems to often accompany like a lot of the modern stuff that we're playing sometimes translates in the dress in a way where I'm like, there's a sexier way to do stoicism. You know, there's another way. There are other ways to do stoicism. that could be like a little bit more thoughtful. But again, this is what my boyfriend lovingly refers to as like my incessant rant about clothes in jazz. So I'll leave it at that.
Another factor for me is also how do you say it?
Practicality?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
It's, might be banal, but, I don't like to carry a lot of shoes with me.
Right.
So I'll have shoes that will be comfortable for me to walk in all day, and be still appropriate wherever I play. So sometimes that is also a factor for me,
Practicality in fashion is the bane of my existence. Like, I'm a woman that plays drums.
Right, yeah.
So that takes out all skirts, all dresses, anything that's not supportive in the upper part of my body takes that out. All the like cute see-through vibes that I love to wear when I'm out at the club, can't wear that. Because, I'm a chunky, I'm a full girly. So if I'm sitting down, I can't have like, it's just so much planning that goes into it for me because there's so much stuff that's like super impractical for me to wear. That is stuff that I would literally love to wear. So it's hard to figure out how to show my style on stage with those limitations. But I don't know. It's still a work in progress for me. I'm still like thinking heavily about that as well.
That's a nice thing that we can think about it like that just because we have something that works now for us or doesn't work, it doesn't mean that like we're bound to this one thing.
Yeah, not
at all. Play what we feel and also wear what we feel and see how it works for us.
Yeah, totally.
Kenny Barron.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him.
Yeah. The goat.
Did you ask him that the question that you asked Cecile?
Ooh. Okay, so I've worded it differently with him. Because whenever I play with Kenny, I'm always nervous, but I always keep in mind that there is nothing that he has not heard. And to that end, if he didn't want to hear me, he wouldn't call me. So those are the two things that I try and keep in mind when I start freaking the hell out.
What kind of thoughts come into your head when you're freaking out?
Oh my God. So the first time I played with him, I called the homie in the middle of the two sets. I called my friend and was like, what do I do? Should I play more on time? Like, how do I, like, what should I do? And they were like, bro, like, just play the music. Chill out. Play the music. It's going to be fine. But when I freak out, I'm like, am I playing too on top? Am I playing too behind? Am I playing too loud? Am I playing too soft? Am I giving him enough right cymbal? Am I giving him enough left hand? Am I over comping? Am I under comping? Am I like misreading his cues? Am I misinterpreting where the line is going? Because I'm listening for that. I'm like, where is he? So I'm like, am I anticipating the wrong ending to that line and then setting up the next thing? Like, if I'm overthinking, that's what is happening. And then I have to remember, girl, there's no playbook for this shit. You got to stop overthinking and just be present. Because he can also hear if you're not present because you're overthinking. So better to be present and make some misjudgments than not be present and, be panicky the whole time. I mean, there's not really any use for that, I feel. So that's kind of what I have in mind with in terms of like, you know, controlling my own overthinking in the situation with him. But I think you know, Kenny is really cool. He is like, touring with him is really a master class in how to be a Zen master. I don't know. Like, he's just so calm. You have to really be pushing it to get a rise out of him, if you will. Like, he's just always super calm, professional, very grounded. And as a musician, he's just a true master. He always sounds so good.
Mm-hmm.
He always sounds so good. And he always is asking for a really high level of presence and participation from me. And he loves young people.
Mm-hmm.
He loves younger generations of players. He pays attention to us. He listens to us. He checks us out.
How does he check you out? Does he go to concerts or does he YouTube?
I think he watches stuff and listens to records we show up on. I mean, for example, I started playing with Kenny in 2018. I have been in New York 2 years. He was one of the first heavy cats to invite me into his world. And the thing that he has told me is he has said to me, sometimes we're so worried about sounding good that we forget to play. That's his answer to this question. I think this larger question is that. And he told me that last year. So through all these years, I'm always like, oh my God, you know, like, woo. And I did a gig with him not long ago that I was really bummed out about my performance on this gig. I had just come I had done a crazy job. This gig was in LA and I had just come from Berlin. But before I was in Berlin, I was in Philly.
Sure.
And then I had to go to New York, and then I had to go to Berlin. And then, right. And then I had to go to LA. Mm-hmm. And this all happened in the span of 4 days. So I was like, fried is an understatement. I was fried. And I was, at that point, like, you know, after spending like most of the last year on the road, it was the first time that I really felt myself start to feel weak, actually, like physically weak. And I showed up to this gig and I was like, all right, let's, you know, like drinking coffee, like smacking myself, like, let's go, you know. And we did the gig and I got through the gig, but the entire time I was playing, I was feeling like it was hard to play. Like it was hard. My arms were like, ugh, like it was not good. And I knew it wasn't good. And I knew that the sound was compromised. And I just had to eat it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like that. You just got to eat it, you know? And trust that, you know, the person that you're playing with or the people that you're playing with can hear it, but also can hear beyond it. And, you know, and that's it. You can't say anything about it. You just got to eat it. I mean, you just got to eat it. You can't be like, oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I sound so bad.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know, you just got to be like.
Mm-hmm. What has helped me in that regard was something that my mentor told me, which is like, we are the iceberg, but you know, we know how big we are, or think how, you know, how we know how, you know, we kind of know what we're about, the size, the whatever. but people usually just see what sticks out, but there's so much down there. And if they already like or have an appreciation for that so much that they called you for a gig, it's fine, it's fine. But we know what's under there, what could be shown or something. But
you have to trust it.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and for others, it's usually like, yeah, it was great.
It was
Great
cool.
gig. Yeah. And we're like, didn't you listen to what you just what just didn't happen?
You're like, I'm trash. They're like, no, it's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we actually don't. We're not supposed to take that away from anybody who had a nice experience, right? It's not ours after we've played it. It's theirs.
That's a really good point. And it's something to keep in mind. Because so often, like, someone's like, that was killing. And I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
When it was, I can be like, yeah, thank you. But when it wasn't, I'm like, ah. But then I have to remember, you can't take that away from them. They're entitled to their own experience of you.
Yeah. And I always have to think of what my bassist told at a masterclass. He said, like, we always try to work on our, like, to reach higher, to work on the high stuff, but we should actually be working on, or what we're not aware of that we're working on actually is to raise our worst level all the time.
Yes.
So, and that's what being professional is actually, that when you reach if you raise your worst level, that your worst night, that's how good you play. In a way, it's hard, but that's how good you are, and everything else is a bonus. The great sound, the great instrument, the inspiring vibe on stage, the great musicians who lift you up. But it's hard to acknowledge that. Ooh.
Yeah, that's real. That's super real. I used to think, like, I used to have a mindset of, like, never have a bad gig. Never have a bad gig.
Ooh, okay.
Like, you don't get to have a bad gig. No bad gigs. Do the prep, do the shit, never have a bad gig. 2 years ago,
You had a bad gig?
I had a bad gig. And then I realized, I'm sure you've had many bad gigs, sis. Whether you wanted to be in denial about it or not is up to you. If you want to have an attitude that you could, can't fold, never fold. It's like, okay, occasionally you're going to fold. And maybe it's not going to be in a huge way, but maybe it's in a way that's actually more subtle that you need to be open to paying attention to.
Yeah.
And in trying to block that out, you're not open to paying attention to it, and you're missing a lesson here. Maturity, I don't know, like maybe like just getting older, starting to gradually pull your head out of your behind, maybe is what that is. But yeah, I feel like now it's just like, yes, you want to be really diligent about preparation. You want to be really diligent about trying to set yourself up to win. Like, set yourself up to win, set your friends up to win, do what you can do on the front end to ensure a good performance. And then you got to leave the rest up to the moment. Yeah.
So, how does Kenny Barron put together a set?
Kenny Barron calls the tune and then you play it.
Yeah.
That's how he puts the set together. But you I think if you've played with the trio a couple times, you have kind of a sense of like what the trio book is. But of course, like, Kenny's always doing different configurations. I mean, just recently he did a concert with Kalia Vandiver on trombone, with Leslie Mock on drums. So he's switching it up all the time. But I did a tour this was a fun moment. We did it like a 2-week tour last summer in Europe. And the last night was at Ronnie's in London, and we had been playing, a similar set list, but with some variations for the entire tour. That last night, he just called like completely different stuff at Ronnie's. And it was super fun because the energy of that show was also very fresh and different. And I don't know, he just felt like playing some different stuff. And that's what we did. And it was fun, Yeah. And even how he was playing and listening to him, I was like, oh, he's throwing some different ones in here today. And I really love that about him, that he is constant. He's like in it. He is not phoning it in. He is not phoning it in. He is in it, like all the way. Super present every time.
I think I saw you guys at North Sea was that part of that tour?
Yes.
So like early July or something?
Yeah.
Played How Deep is the Ocean?
Yeah.
Estate, and something else that I...
that show was hard. The sound was not our friend that day.
Yeah, rough sound.
Ooh.
Yeah, super big hall and lots of feedback from bass monitor or something. I don't know what was happening, but yeah.
I met David and I met Andrew Cyril that day.
Right, yeah, they were there too.
That was super cool. Yeah, fun set, but definitely challenging. And it was also hard because Jonathan was there. Because he was playing with Bill Frisell on the same stage.
Right.
So he was there. He's standing there watching me play. It's his gig. I'm subbing for him. He's standing there watching me play. I was like, oh. But it was fun. It was fun. It was a fun show. Fun set.
Yeah. You sounded great.
Thanks.
I mean, you were the trio. Was great to hear you guys. Yeah. But now I'm confused. Did you tell me now how you asked him the question that you asked Cecile? Maybe I'm spacing out already.
Yeah, I mean, basically I didn't ask him directly, but we have had conversations about it over the years. And the main thing that he left me with on this topic is that, like, he said sometimes we're so worried about sounding good that we forget to play.
Oh, that's it.
And that's really, I felt like that was just a great answer for pretty much all the questions in that line of like, how do I It's like,
get out of your head. That's
play.
It. Yeah.
Play your instrument. Like, play the music.
There's that story of like it happens in normal life as well, where you think about you need a hammer and you want to ask your neighbor, but then you think like, how would he react? And does he even have a hammer? And maybe he would hate me if I would just knock on his door. Maybe it's not a good time. And it all ends in you knocking at his door and saying like, you know what? Forget your fucking hammer. I don't want it. Without.
And he's like, what? Like,
what? It's all in your head. It's all in your head. So you actually forget to do the thing that you wanted to do.
And it's, in so many areas of life that's applicable. And communication in general. It's like, in relationships even, it's like, like, don't give yourself and the other person the benefit of the doubt. Like, don't build up a scenario in your head that's unflattering to you or them, because then you're stuck in that. Like,
Yeah. I'm curious about a thing because my father is also a pianist. My mother plays the piano and is a piano technician and plays the guitar. So we both come from musical families.
Yeah.
So my question is sometimes, why do we play music? Do we play music because it was all around us and it was just a way of, Do you know what I mean? It was a way of communicating. It was a way of expressing
bonding, getting attention.
That's it. I'm trying to get to that. I just had a conversation with a trumpet player. She was at the same concert as I was, and she asked me how I was, and it was like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm stumped by that question. Maybe I don't have the direct access always to my feelings. So I said, let me think about it. And then we talked about some more. And then by being honest about that, I didn't really know how I felt in that moment. We kind of got quickly into the honest space of talking to each other. And she told me like, yeah, I'm actually getting back into jazz because I grew up listening to jazz. My father is a saxophone player and he listened to Coltrane all the time. And Coltrane felt like an uncle to me. He was around all the time. But playing music was, for me, a way to be closer to my father. That was my entry point. And that, as a father, for me, that made me think like, oh, what am I doing with my kids? Am I doing everything? What is my entry point to them? How do I open up? And then that made me think of, why do I play music? Some people are still trying to impress their parents sometimes, or that's their way of communicating, their way of bonding. And I'm sure I'm not free of that. There's some aspect of that. So I want to pick your brain about it.
I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts on this. I came from a scene where people knew my parents. They knew me as the child of my parents. There was not a separation in me from my parents in their perception. So that kind of meant that whatever I was doing or not doing seemed to reflect on my parents in a very public way, and vice versa. The things that my parents were doing or not doing reflected on me. And that experience was intense for me as a kid. My stepfather passed away my senior year of high school, so I was 18, just newly 18. And after he passed, I had decided, or in that final year of his life, I had decided, like, I don't want to play music anymore. I'm good. And I quit playing drums. I stopped doing gigs, stopped doing rehearsals. Everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, now is not the time to stop playing. Like, you're just about to become an adult. You're just about to go. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to school for journalism anyway. I'm not playing.
Right.
I don't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it because I felt like going through that experience growing up. And then my stepdad was really a giant in a lot of ways. To me and other people too, I think, to some degree. And like, his passing was so impactful to me and also so illuminating in many ways that I was like, man, I'm good. Like, I don't want to be dealing with, I don't want to have like I don't want to have to be teaching, touring, playing drums. Like, I'm good. And then, a year later, like, I just found my way back to it. But it felt like it was on my own terms and for me. And it was also in a completely different context because at that point I had moved across the country by myself, no family around, to Washington, D.C. So I felt like I could enter a completely new scene as myself and then decide how I wanted to be in that scene and interacting musically and personally with them for me. So now I feel like I play music because it is DNA level who I am. I also feel that for me, on a faith God level, it's part of what I've been asked to do with my time. So I feel compelled to do it. And I think that shift happened after I left home and found my way back to my instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly in the beginning, it's just like it was the way to connect
Mm-hmm.
with my family and with my community. And I had both my dad and my stepdad and my mom, and everyone was involved in it. Everyone's going to gigs, going to rehearsals, like, so it's just like I was just always there. Like I was like, they were just taking me to rehearsal. They pick me up from school, take me to rehearsal, you know? And I'm sitting in rehearsal doing my homework or whatever. Like that was my life. And that's a good question. That's a hard question. When I first started playing music for myself again, part of it was to spite my parents almost.
Mm-hmm.
There was a part of it that felt like, I'm going to see what I could do with this and I'm going to show y'all.
What kind of music did you play then?
In the self-reclamation time?
Yeah.
A lot of, that was when I started playing more like avant-garde stuff. And also doing like, at that time, I was playing with musicians in DC who play everything. But I was like playing with Taurus Mateen a lot on bass. I was playing with Chris Funn. I was playing with like Janelle Gill, super dope pianist. I was playing with Samuel Prather, who was like, he's a multi-instrumentalist and a composer. So I was like playing a variety of stuff, which felt comfortable to me coming from the Bay, because in the Bay, you go up playing like jazz, gospel, blues, Latin, you have to be kind of plugged into everything. And DC is also like that as a scene. So I felt good doing that. So it was still in the realm of jazz. It was still very much in that world, but it just felt like it was mine. Like, felt like it was my opportunity to carve some space out for myself in it.
It's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical.
Yeah.
It's critical because ultimately it's too hard to be doing for someone else.
Oh, yeah.
It's too hard. Like it has to be something at a certain point, at a certain level, you have to be doing it because you love it, because you're compelled to do it.
Because otherwise you can't overcome all these obstacles that are in your way when you want to do music.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much of an ass whooping to just be taking for somebody else. Like
exactly, because the actual music making is just such a fraction of it. Although it's on our mind the whole time, the actual
it's
making
like 40% of it, right? Would you say, or even less?
Even less, I would say. I want it to be more, but I'm not playing like not anymore. The majority of days of the month, I'm not. When I became a parent, I got more selective of what I actually want to leave the house for.
You have to.
Yeah. So I'm mostly doing the things that I want to do in combination with, or not in combination, but in relation to how much it's there's opportunities for it, Although I would like to play more. I have a certain amount of gigs, that's fine, and then I leave the house for that and don't leave the house for. So in the time where I'm not doing that, I'm trying to, I have to do my taxes. I have to do it.
Admin.
I have to do
it's admin.
Admin. That's the word.
It's admin.
Exactly, and that takes up so much time that the actual, sitting on stage, playing and connecting with people is just a fraction. So you have to just have a genuine love for it that helps you overcome all these things.
Yes. 100%. It's admin, it's social stuff. I mean, it's like, even like, sometimes when I do like master classes or like teaching stuff, which is stuff that I've been doing more recently. That's newer work for me in the last couple of years. But I always get a lot of questions about like, okay, like, what do you do once you get to New York? What do you do once you buy the plane ticket, once you pull up in New York? Like, what do you do to like make it happen? And that's the question. All the kids want to know, how do I make a career happen? And it's like, ooh. Well, first of all, you have to abandon the idea that it's only going to take 6 months or a year or whatever to start working, because it often takes a lot longer than that. And then there's also the part where it's like there's this really weird, funky, delicate balance of the playing, the social stuff, the admin stuff, the professionalism stuff, like all these elements that have to kind of be in development simultaneously, it seems, to like make something happen, you know? And it's so much work and it's hard.
But also you don't wake up or you don't listen to A Love Supreme and realize, I want to have a career. That's not the first thought, you know? But it becomes such a big question for so many people. But while asking that question, they lose sight of the most important thing, which is you have to have the love for the music, as we just said, you know? Yeah. And that will pull you through and give you the strength to do all that, the bullshit around it, you know?
Yes. Oh.
It's like, you want to have a career? Yeah, work on playing better. And, you know, the greatest website won't do the job for you if you can't deal, you know?
No, it will not. No, it will not. Hey. We're just telling it like it is, okay? We're trying to help. I'm trying to, we're trying to get funky, but that's what it is.
Thank you for doing this with me. This has been an absolute pleasure and so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really great. See you soon.
I'm glad we got to do it.